Alright guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to go over this great email that was sent from a subscriber. This is from a guy, he's in his 40s, he is happily divorced, he is a father, and he shares his story, a long one, about the whole adventure he went through when he first met his wife, got married to her, and the downward spiral that was their marriage. And how she, of course, tried everything she could, in spite of him being a good man, good father, to ruin him. Fortunately, our guy's pretty smart, and she's not so much, and he ends up making out like a bandit. That'd be a great one to go over here for all you guys that right now may be going through a divorce. This will give you hope. Or if one day you go through it, you can hear a story about a guy that did go through hard times, don't get me wrong, but lives to see life on the other end and is doing quite well. Now, as I said, this is long. This happened 10 years ago. This guy really documented all this because he wanted everybody to hear his story and learn. So this is actually going to be 3 parts. So I'm going to be covering first part now, and I'll do part 2. I'll publish part 2 in 2 hours, give you guys a break, and the final part 2 hours after that. So you get the whole story in one day. And obviously, since this is long, I'm going to jump right into it. He says, "Hi SSM. I discovered your channel about 6 months ago and wanted to say thank you for the content that you create. I finally decided to share my story out of hopes that other men can learn from the tactics I used to protect myself during a contentious divorce that included character destruction, lies, and manipulations that seem to be more and more common these days. I've always been a student of history as well as military tactics and was able to apply many of these to great effect while going through my divorce. These include use of deception and speed, implying weakness where I was strong and strength where weak, preparing the battlefield ahead of time, dividing and conquering the enemy, as well as laying red herrings, my personal favorite. Yeah, man, use history to help you. Thing is, most people don't like history, therefore don't learn from history or use it to benefit them. When I saw the writing on the wall, I began to use every tactic, both fair and foul, to ensure that I did not lose my child in my divorce. My main goal in the divorce was to do what is morally right in an unjust and immoral world. Be honest and protect myself, but most of all, be present for my child's future, because I take the role of father as the most important one that I have. I know of many well-deserved smacks coming from you, and I will not disagree. There were many times going through this divorce that being naive and arrogant pride could have cost me everything. The story may be too long for your platform, and I apologize for the length in advance. Please filter as you see fit for your audience if you decide to use my story." Well, bro, it's a great story. They're getting it all. That's why I'm splitting this up into 3 videos. For my part, I'm a mid-40s man, and I went through my divorce about 10 years ago. I met my ex-wife, we will call her Mercy, when I was in my late 20s. You call her Mercy? I'd be calling her something else with an M. I had played the dating field in my late teens and early 20s with mostly casual dating that wasn't going anywhere and random hookups. As I got to my late 20s, this got boring, and I decided that I wanted to settle down and have a family. I wanted the house, the wife, and the kids that are part of the American dream. I wasn't interested in marrying the type of girls that I had hooked up with in the past. Well, who'd want to marry them? Come on here. I wanted a woman who'd be a good mother, come from a good family, and had a stable career, and had not had her back blown out by the hose phase in college. Well, that's increasingly difficult to find these days. My ex-wife, again, we'll call her Mercy, reached out to me on a dating app from another state saying that she was moving into my area soon and wanted to meet more people there. She was early 20s, slender build, attractive, and sexually inexperienced compared to me. Was she telling you that? Was that on her dating profile? We began talking long distance, and after several months, I flew down to meet her. Smack! You're going to get other girls from your area, and why don't she come to see you? Already she's got the power. You're coming to see her. At surface level, it looked like she came from a good family. Her parents were still married, had a nice home, and were about to retire. She had 2 practicing lawyers in her family, and her father had passed the bar as well, but had not practiced in years. Mercy was a nurse who just graduated. Smack! Well, you didn't know back then. Her parents were still married, but little did I know both her sisters and her brother had serious psychological problems and had been formally diagnosed and treated for their psychological conditions. Over time, I found this out little by little. As it turns out, crazy ran in the family. Did you find this out before or after you said I do? The first time we met in her home state, she mentioned that her family thought she was staying the weekend with a girlfriend of hers in another city, and she needed to keep a low profile while out of town, meaning there were specific places that we had to actively avoid. She told me she didn't want them knowing that she was meeting someone from another state because she knew that they wouldn't approve. That's already suspicious. That's weird. She's in her 20s. She's about to become a nurse where people's lives will be in her hands. She can meet somebody at the freaking Golden Corral or wherever the hell you're going to meet for dinner. Or you get my point. This is ridiculous. This seemed completely unnecessary to me. Ding, ding, ding. Already we're getting ideas of her character. She was a grown-ass woman living on her own, spending a couple of days hanging out with a guy. It's not like this was a booty call that she needed to be ashamed of. Or with me sneaking out the back window like we were in high school. We were adults, for goodness sake. I rented my own room near her apartment and had no plans of pursuing sex with her in the first couple days of our meeting. Rented a room? Are you talking about just getting a hotel room or something? Or did you stay in the area for a while? I'm a little confused about that. It bothered me that as an adult, she felt the need to lie to her family over something as petty as a first date. But I shrugged this first red flag off, smack, since I did not know her family dynamic, and she seemed like the type of girl I was looking for. Again, you had to go out of state to find a girl? I'm sure in your area there are other gals that weren't having the hose phase back then, and you could have, But okay, we got a good story here. We had a great time together and decided to keep seeing each other. Every couple months, we would take turns flying out to see each other for a long weekend together. Okay, I'm glad she was coming to you. If you were always going to her, that would be terrible. Her family had not been pleased to find out that she was dating someone from a different state, and her father tried to get her to break it off 2 to 3 trips back and forth. What the fuck? Her and I decided to keep dating and began to meet each other's family. Her parents were cordial and polite, but standoffish at first. There's a sign. This whole thing is weird. But there's weird freaking people out there. Out of state. It's not like, they wanted her to be specifically dating and getting serious with an American, and you were from another country, of a different culture, a different religion, different language. No, a different freaking state. Unless, they were, I'm not going to say, I don't want to get into politics here, but you get my point. Her family had some weird dynamics in their relationship, such as her parents sleeping apart. Her dad only slept in a chair and only for a few hours at a time, multiple times through the day or night, keeping very strange hours. Okay. Doesn't matter if they're still married, obviously they're miserable. Her family always seemed to walk on eggshells around each other. Her sister was a raging liberal, feminist. Her brother was a narcissist. Her dad was a communist that makes Bernie Sanders look like Trump. And her mother was a conservative. So it was a mixed bag of goods to say the least, and any topic said in front of one was likely to bring the whole house of cards down. Needless to say, I understood why Mercy wanted to leave. They're not just her leaving, how about you leaving? You want to marry into this? This is what her family is. This is going to be your family? Are you out of your freaking mind, dude? But obviously, I think you just so bad wanted a relationship that you're going to take anything. I mean, that's crazy. My family, on the other hand, was very genuine and took a different view on things like this. We may have different opinions, but don't allow it to affect how we treat each other. Family's family, after all. Well, that's good to hear, man. And your family probably should have told you these people are nuts. My family is well established in my area and welcomed Mercy graciously as one of our own, and she seemed to be very grateful. We dated long distance for a year. Smack! Can't believe you did that. Before she was ready to move to my state. I found her an apartment and flew out to help her pack up her stuff and move across country to her new place. Her parents had eventually accepted that their daughter was moving away and were always polite to my face, but on the day of her move, after she said her goodbyes and were about to pull out of the driveway to start the road trip, I walked up to her father to shake his hand. To me, it was an important gesture of respect that I owed him as the father of my girlfriend. I agree with that. And I understood how it must be hard for any man to watch his daughter drive halfway across the country with another man. I understand the importance of that moment and wanted him to know my sincerity about taking good care of his daughter and the responsibility that was implied. Well, again, that was good of you to do that. I held up my hand to him, he looked at it, and then walked away without saying a word. What a fucking douchebag. Again, more signs, brother. All these signs are being presented to you that this is a bad idea. You ignored them. He didn't have the guts to look me in the eyes. He did it. It was one of the largest signs of disrespect I could have imagined at the moment. But I understood that he was from a different culture and was struggling with the fact that he would see his daughter much less and that he blamed me for this, so left it at that. What did this jerk-off expect his daughter to live in his house for the rest of his life? Well, that's actually going to happen. But we'll get there eventually. My job had me traveling quite often, so I would stay weekends with her at her new place and began helping to pay half the rent since I was using it as a base of operations. Smack! No. I mean, my understanding is she has her place, and you got your place. So you're paying full rent on your place, and you're also paying half the rent on her place? And she's a nurse. I'm assuming that they usually do fairly well. The fuck? I think she knew this in advance. The apartment was hers. I just stayed there while I was in town. I introduced her to everyone I knew and helped support her introduction into the culture and community where I lived. I proposed to her on our second anniversary. Smack! After 2 years of dating and 1 year's long distance, after being a wacko family, brother. And we decided to set the date for 6 months down the road. God. One of the reasons I waited for her for as long as I did to pursue was because I wanted to see how she would fight before committing to her. But we had not fought once in 2 years. As soon as she got the ring, that changed. In other words, I want to see what she's like in real life. Yeah, this happens a lot. The second the girl gets the engagement ring, all of a sudden the true colors start to come out. Because she's like, I got this guy. And by the way, after 2 years, you're already proposing. And 1 year, you're essentially living together. In her mind, wow, this guy really is into me. I can do whatever I want. We had spoken about a prenup in passing earlier and had agreed in spirit to get one for ourselves before we got married. But when it came to sit down and put it together, she started backpedaling. My concerns were straightforward. She had credit card debt as well as auto and student loans for 5 years of college with almost no assets to her name, while I had zero debt and nothing but assets. I was very financially stable enough in my late 20s that when I wanted a newer truck, I went out and paid cash for a truck. That was only 2 to 3 years old. I was frugal and lived well below my means, with the majority of my money going into savings. If we were to get a divorce and she tried to contest it, her pre-existing debt could easily set me back a decade. Then I'm going to say what most of the guys were thinking. Why the fuck did you marry her? You want to get together with a girl that shares similar values, but also financially. You're doing great in terms of how you are with your money. Live beneath your means. And then when you have to buy a new vehicle, you can pay cash instead of paying interest on a depreciating asset, amongst many other things. And she's loaded in debt and all that, and I guarantee there's more debt than she's presenting to you. And her asshole family. This is a disaster. But he's in his 20s. He wanted to settle down. She painted the picture for him. A little desperate, but our guy will redeem himself. See, guys, many guys make varying degrees mistakes like this. Because we had already agreed to a prenup while we had been dating, it surprised me that she was now bothered by this idea. Of course she's bothered by it because she's marrying you and can benefit from you. She said that it hurt her that I would think like that. That marriage is about trust and commitment. That if I was already planning for the end, that we probably shouldn't be getting married. Okay, see ya. That she was hurt and I wouldn't trust her and so forth. Every time we would speak about it, I would calmly and rationally explain my thoughts, and she would eventually agree after several hours of talking. And then when we came to draft it, she'd become pissy and start the whole thing all over again. That was her tactic to wear you down, brother. I took her point of view and her words at face value. I assumed that she was just looking at this emotionally while I was looking at it rationally, and assumed no ill intent on her part. You assumed wrong, brother. The two critical issues I wanted addressed in a prenup were pre-existing assets and debt. As I was ready to buy my first home with a full 20% down payment, while she was nowhere near that. Because she didn't want a prenup, I researched the laws in the state that I live in, I found that there was already a good legal protection for me concerning pre-existing assets and debt. So essentially the items I wanted protected were at least decently protected as long as I was strategic about how I did things. Because of this, I decided the prenup was redundant and wasn't worth the continued fight, which would may result in me losing the woman I loved. Smack. Yeah, smack. If she doesn't agree to it, guys, walk away. And this guy had plenty of reasons to walk away. I know you get a son out of this, and thank God for that, but my God, my man. I'm glad you found my channel. Well, we had a great wedding, although it wasn't without drama brought by her family. Her brother had to be forcibly restrained from getting into a fight with another guy, and we soon discovered why her father only drank on rare occasions. About an hour into the reception, the mid-60-year-old man decided to start doing beer bongs and keg stands with the young crowd out back and ended the night by puking in the bed in my family member's guest cabin, where her whole family was staying for the wedding. I want to get back to the beer bongs and the keg stands at a wedding. Obviously, this was a much more laid-back wedding if you got fucking kegs back there. They left the guest house with the bed sheets and mattress still covered in vomit and didn't tell anybody. My family was too polite to tell me about it until after the divorce. But I learned in my dismay that my mother ended up scrubbing the mattress and washing the chunks off the sheets. This was her first introduction to her new in-laws. This is the first time your parents met her family? God almighty. We bought our first house shortly thereafter and began trying for our first of many children that we planned to have. After we were married, I sat down to go over our budget. Oh, this should have been fun. We'd agreed to do our finances jointly for bills, but to have separate accounts so as to not build resentment over frivolous spending on minor things. You mean her frivolous spending on minor things. You're the responsible one, except for marrying her. Before we were married, but still living in an apartment together, she had once mentioned being short on cash. I sat down to go over her budget and saw that she had too much going out and not enough coming in. Well, did her communist father teach her how to do finances? Her savings were dropping every month for several months in a row. I explained that the brand new car that her parents had encouraged her to buy as soon as she graduated college, mixed with her student loan payments coming due at the same time or after graduation, leveraged her too much with her other bills. She's a fucking moron when it comes to finances. This is not ideal wife material. And her parents probably encouraged her to buy that car, figuring you're going to pay for it. Her minimal payments were barely touching the principal, and she was going backwards. She had a decent amount of money saved up from working while living off student loans, but she was making minimal payments on multiple small loans that she could have easily paid off with part of her savings, while still leaving a good safety net for her without the payments and the interest. What an idiot. This would reduce her monthly bills enough so that she was then growing her savings again, instead of decreasing it. I told her that it didn't make sense to pay interest on debt simply because you fall in love with looking at a number in your savings account when you have the means to reduce your monthly expenses significantly. Yeah, there are people that will keep a big balance in their bank accounts or money market accounts. Meanwhile, they got all these fucking debts that they owe money to, but they like to see that big bank account number. It's like, you could take that money and pay off those debts so you're not paying interest on those, you idiot. It's amazing how dumb people are when it comes to money. In hindsight, I see that while everything I said was correct, the mistake I made was that her father had been giving her financial advice up to this point, and his advice, simply stated, was bad. The communist has given her financial advice and how to be clear, I did not tell her he gave her bad advice. I simply stated that the way I proposed would save her more money and get her on the right side faster, because she had too much debt. In her eyes, I was essentially telling her that her father gave her bad financial advice by discouraging her from buying a lower-priced car instead of a brand new one. Oh, for goodness sake. And discouraging her from paying off her debt because of the tax deductions she received on interest payments. What interest payments? Or what tax deduction? I mean, obviously the student loans. That's what I said. Everything I said was correct, but her father was perfect in her eyes. Big red flag. To lay some background here, her father had tried 3 different career paths, each one requiring a bachelor's degree or higher to even begin with. Every time he wanted to try something new, he went back to college for a new bachelor's or master's degree, and eventually even a doctorate, all in unrelated fields. One of these clowns, professional student. And of course, he probably thinks he knows everything about everything. How much debt does this motherfucker have? Unfortunately, he was more of a professional student than anything. He had so much student debt that even after being forced into early retirement, when he was terminated from his last job, he was still making major payments on the hundreds of thousands of dollars he had borrowed for his education. And I bet you he's one of these jerk-offs that think that he should have it all paid for by taxpayers. Remember the rather than press the issue, I agreed to increase the amount I was contributing for rent until marriage. Smack! Dumbass. But once we were married, I told her we would be budgeting together. We would pool out our money, each of us would get an allowance per week for miscellaneous personal expenses, and I would pay off her debt because, like it or not, when you marry a person, you get their debt too. He says, I know you're going to smack me for agreeing, SSM, but this one was at least a strategic and done on purpose, so please be patient before throwing hands at me. Well, you know what, guys? Our guy, I know a lot of you are probably like, why do I want to hear part 2 and 3? This guy's a fuck-up. Our guy's made mistakes, and he acknowledges that. But our guy definitely redeems himself in the end. I swear to God. We bought a house. I paid off her car in one full swoop, and then began putting thousands per month towards her student debt. Within 18 months, using both of our incomes and my overtime to boot, as well as halting my own savings growth during that time, I was able to pay down about $30,000 of her debt while still preparing for our first child. Well, that's great and all if she was actually worth it, but she's not. But I know you tell us why you did that versus something else. Here was where my asset protection kicked in and why this may not have deserved a smack. If I paid $30,000 towards our house, she would have been entitled to half the appreciation this brought, even though the house was bought with my down payment. My down payment money was kept separate from her, and I could prove the amount was there before the marriage. But the purchase of the house happened after we were married. Okay, the down payment money was before you got married, therefore, separate. And then the money used later was in joint accounts and all that after you're married. I see where you're going with this. I was able to demonstrate the down payment went straight from a pre-existing account into the house. That was still my personal money after the marriage. The $30,000 of debt reduction was spent over the course of the next 18 months after we were married. This means it's joint money. But it came out of my account and straight to her student loans, which was a premarital debt. Okay, premarital debt. Got you. I know where you're going with this, but I think it all would boil down to a judge, who they tend to favor the wives. Since the $30,000 went directly to her pre-existing debt, it was not commingling assets. This kept a clear and trackable line of checks that went from my money to her debt. And essentially, I was forced to pay off her student loans with money she was borrowing from herself out of her portion of any appreciation the house brought. As I type this out, I'm having to smile my devious nature here that she never saw coming. But this is clearly a case of fuck around and find out, because if she ever pulled her crap, she would never have found out. And guys, that is going to be the end of part 1, because otherwise it'd be all too much in one video. And now in part 2, you're going to see where this marriage, big surprise, goes to hell in a handbasket and all that, and then eventually how she tries to pull all this BS to take him down, but the exact opposite happens. Our guy here, marrying her was dumb, but our guy was not stupid once he realized and saw the big picture and how he ends up really coming out on top. So I will see you in 2 hours for part 2. And remember, a couple hours of that, part 3. I'll see you then.